When Emma opened her eyes, the hands on the living room clock rested exactly at 9. The doorbell at the entryway rang with a piercing trill. She walked barefoot to the door and looked through the peephole. Chloe stood outside, holding a gift box stamped with a high-end designer logo. She wore a sickeningly sweet smile, the corners of her eyes deliberately glancing toward the hallway security camera as she played the part of someone completely innocent and harmless. Emma's heart pounded wildly, and her fingertips trembled. She had actually been reborn. She had been reborn on the exact day Chloe came to give her husband, Liam, the watch hiding a wiretap. In her previous life, Emma had been foolish. When she opened the gift box, she had felt an unusual bulge on the back of the watch face. She took it apart right then and there, discovered the bug, and called the police without a second thought. When Chloe became a wanted fugitive, she fled in a blind panic, crashed into a semi-truck, and died on the spot. Emma had thought she had done a good deed, only to be immediately stabbed in the back by Liam, the husband she had shared a bed with for 3 years. He deliberately tampered with the confidential translation drafts she held for a transnational negotiation, and even slipped a voice recorder into her bag to make it look like she was contacting foreign agents, framing her for espionage. She was taken away for investigation and ultimately sentenced to 15 years in prison. Her parents had run themselves ragged trying to appeal her case, but they were both killed in a car accident along the way. The Davis family was destroyed overnight. In the end, Emma was poisoned in the detention center, never even getting to see her parents one last time. Hey everyone, what would you do with a second chance after the ultimate betrayal? Today's story is an epic comeback about rebuilding your life from the ashes. Let's dive in. Taking a deep breath, Emma suppressed the hatred in her eyes and reached out to open the door. As soon as Chloe saw her, she immediately called out sweetly, "Emma, I came specifically to bring Liam a promotion gift. Congratulations to him on becoming the chief translator." Emma stepped aside to let her in, forcing the exact same joyful smile she had worn in her past life. She deliberately raised her voice and called out toward the living room, "Honey, look who's here. Chloe came all the way here just to bring you a gift." Liam was sitting on the couch, flipping through the Foreign Affairs Daily. The moment he heard the voice and looked up to see Chloe, the smile in his eyes was almost too quick to hide. Yet, he put on an act, furrowing his brow as he said, "Chloe, why did you go out of your way to come here? You didn't have to bring a gift. You really shouldn't have." Emma sneered internally. In her past life, she had genuinely believed they were just innocent friends from college. It wasn't until she ended up in the detention center that she learned from an insider that Liam and Chloe had been together since high school. If her father hadn't been a senior official in the State Department who could pave the way for Liam to become chief translator, he never would have married her in the first place. Emma walked over and linked her arm through Liam's, giving it a playful shake as she coaxed, "Oh, honey, Chloe came all this way. Just accept it, won't you? I'm already curious to see what it is." Chloe quickly handed over the gift box. Emma opened it right in front of them, revealing the limited edition men's designer watch worth over $300,000 inside. Feigning shock, she covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Wow, I was on a wait list for half a year and couldn't even get my hands on this watch. Chloe, you're so thoughtful." Liam's eyes flickered. He naturally knew exactly what kind of dirty trick was hidden inside this watch, yet he maintained his righteous facade. "This is too expensive," he said. "I can't accept it." Emma simply picked up the watch, grabbed his wrist, and began strapping it on him. Smiling, she said, "Why can't you accept it? Chloe is your friend from school and my friend too. What's a watch between friends? Aren't you going to that $300 million transnational business negotiation tomorrow? You can wear this watch to dress the part. It'll look great." Emma clearly saw Chloe's eyes light up the moment she heard the word negotiation. Meanwhile, Liam kept a straight face and discreetly rubbed the watch dial. The two of them quickly exchanged what they thought was a covert glance. Emma pretended not to notice, turning to head into the kitchen to pour some juice. Just as she reached the corner, she heard Chloe lower her voice and say, "Liam, she didn't suspect anything, did she?" Liam gave a scornful laugh. "I've got her so wrapped around my finger, she's completely clueless. What could she possibly figure out? Once I leak the reserve price at tomorrow's negotiation and get the $5 million payout, we'll move abroad and settle down. We'll never have to look at her face again." Emma's hands paused on the juice glasses, the icy resolve in her eyes nearly spilling over. In her previous life, she had been foolish. She had single-handedly ruined their plan, but ended up taking herself down in the process. In this life, not only would she refrain from exposing them prematurely, but she would personally send them straight to hell. Carrying the juice, she walked back out and handed the glasses to them with a smile. "What are you two chatting about? You look so happy." Chloe jumped slightly, hastily taking the juice. "Nothing, just congratulating Liam on his promotion." Emma sat down and deliberately leaned close to Liam. Oh, by the way, honey, I've copied all the confidential materials for tomorrow's negotiation onto your usual flash drive. Make sure you don't lose it. If anything goes wrong this time, it carries serious criminal liability. Liam's eyes lit up startlingly bright. He quickly nodded and said, Don't worry, honey. I'll definitely keep it safe. After the negotiation is over, I'll take you to buy that diamond necklace you've had your eye on for so long. Emma smiled and nodded, but inwardly, she was sneering. She had long since installed an auto-triggering alert program on that flash drive. The moment he dared to connect it to a computer to copy the files, the National Security Bureau's system would instantly receive an alarm. Furthermore, just last night, she had already backed up all the chat logs of his communications with foreign agents, as well as the bank statements showing his accepted bribes. She was just waiting for him to bring that watch into the negotiation venue tomorrow so they could catch him red-handed. Early the next morning, before heading out, Liam made a point to hug her and kissed her on the forehead. Honey, wait for me to come back from a successful negotiation. I'll take you to your favorite French restaurant. Emma smiled and nodded as she adjusted his tie. As her fingertips brushed past the watch on his wrist, she intentionally pressed hard against the exact spot on the back of the dial where the wiretap was hidden. Liam visibly stiffened. Shifting his gaze guiltily, he said, I'm going to head out first, otherwise I'll be late. As soon as the front door clicked shut, the smile on Emma's face vanished instantly. She picked up the folder of evidence she had prepared well in advance, grabbed her car keys, and drove straight to the city's National Security Bureau. The person who received her happened to be Officer Hayes, the very detective who had been in charge of her case in her previous life. He had sensed something fishy about her case back then, but the fabricated evidence was too solid to overturn the verdict. In the end, he was even the one who had helped collect her parents' belongings and brought them to her in prison. He was an upright and honest man. Seeing her, Officer Hayes stood up and asked, Ma'am, how can I help you? She handed the file folder to him, her voice entirely calm. Hello, officer. My name is Emma Davis. I am the wife of Liam Davis, the current chief translator for the State Department, and I am also the deputy head of the translation team for this transnational business negotiation. I am here to report Liam for colluding with others and conspiring with foreign agents to steal confidential information from this negotiation. When he went to the negotiation venue today, the limited edition, $300,000 watch he was wearing on his wrist contained a hidden micro wiretap. Inside this folder is evidence I have been collecting for over half a year. It includes his chat logs with foreign contacts, bank statements of the bribes he has received, and the drafts he prepared to tamper with the translation documents. Every piece of it is true. Officer Hayes had initially seemed casual, but after opening the folder and reading through just 2 pages, his expression changed instantly. He immediately stood up and called over his colleagues. Officer Hayes said he would immediately contact the on-site security to detain Liam. They rushed to the negotiation venue. By the time they arrived at the Four Seasons Hotel, it was exactly during the intermission. The national security agents coordinated with the on-site security and followed Emma directly to the fire escape stairs. Just as they reached the corner, they heard Liam's hushed voice. The reserve price from the first round of negotiations just now is $210 million, and their concession margin is $10 million. I'll send you the specific contract text tomorrow. Tell them they need to wire half of the payout to my offshore account first. Emma lifted her chin. The national security agents immediately rushed forward and pinned Liam directly against the wall. With his face pressed against the cold wall, Liam still struggled and roared. What are you doing? I am the chief translator for this negotiation. On what grounds are you arresting me? Officer Hayes stepped forward, took the watch right off Liam's wrist, and used a tool to pry open the back cover of the dial. With a click, the black micro wiretap dropped onto the ground. Holding up the wiretap, Officer Hayes said with a cold face, Liam Davis, someone has reported you by name for suspected theft of state secrets. Come back with us for investigation. Liam's face instantly turned as white as a sheet. He jerked his head around and saw Emma standing behind them. His eyes instantly turned red as he roared. Emma, it's you. You reported me, didn't you? You venomous woman, I've always treated you well, and you actually set me up. Emma walked over and squatted in front of him. With a smile on her face, she lowered her voice so only the two of them could hear. Set you up? In our past life, you and Chloe conspired to destroy my family. When I was living a life worse than death in that detention center, why didn't you ever think you'd face this day? Oh, right. How do you think I got my hands on the chat logs you hid in the secret compartment of the closet? I've known about your filthy affair for a long time. Not only am I going to take you down, but Chloe won't escape either. After hearing her words, Liam's eyes bulged as if they were about to pop out. He was just about to speak when the national security agents covered his mouth and dragged him away. Emma took out her phone and dialed Chloe's number. The moment the call connected, she deliberately put on a panicked tone and said, "Chloe, hurry over to the fire escape at the Four Seasons Hotel. Liam had a bit of an accident during the negotiation just now and is being given a hard time. He said he has something very important to give you. Get over here quickly, and don't let anyone see you." Chloe had initially been hesitant, but as soon as she heard there was something important, she immediately agreed, saying she would be there in 20 minutes. Emma hung up the phone, leaned against the wall, and shot a look at Officer Hayes. Officer Hayes understood the cue and immediately arranged for his men to lie in wait at the entrance of the fire escape. In less than 20 minutes, Chloe came running over in a panic. As soon as she reached the door of the fire escape, she was pinned to the ground by the waiting national security agents. Screaming and struggling, Chloe saw Emma standing nearby and instantly realized what had happened. She roared, "Emma, you played me!" Emma walked up to her, sneering. "Played you? The watch you gave Liam had a wiretap hidden inside. The two of you conspired to steal state secrets, and the evidence is irrefutable. Have fun rotting in a prison cell. Oh, by the way, Liam just confessed to everything. He said the whole thing was your idea. Get ready to spend the rest of your life behind bars." Hearing this, Chloe's face turned deathly pale, and she collapsed to the floor, muttering, "Impossible." Emma had no interest in looking at her pathetic face any longer and turned to leave. The moment she walked out of the hotel's main entrance, the sunlight spilled across her face, and she finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. For the vengeance of this lifetime, she had finally collected the first installment of interest. As Emma got into her car, her fingertips were still trembling slightly. The window was rolled halfway down, and the wind blew in, carrying the scent of sweet osmanthus from the street, which finally quelled the surge of adrenaline she had just felt. She took out her phone and called her mom. The moment the call connected, she heard the familiar nagging. "Emma, are you coming home for dinner tonight? I made your favorite pork rib and lotus root soup." Emma's nose stung, and she almost shed a tear. In her previous life at this time, her mother had already suffered a heart attack from the shock of her espionage charges and had been sent to the ICU. She didn't even last half a month before passing away. Her father had been implicated and stripped of his position, and later, a month before Emma was executed, he had committed suicide at home out of severe depression. Sniffling, Emma tried to keep her voice as steady as possible. "I'm heading home right now. I even brought you and Dad your favorite roasted chestnuts." When she got home, her dad was wearing his reading glasses and watching the news. Seeing her return alone, he paused in surprise. "Where's Liam? Wasn't his negotiation today? Why didn't he come back with you?" Emma set her things down on the dining table, sat down, and told them exactly what had happened with Liam and Chloe from beginning to end. She only omitted the part about her rebirth, claiming instead that she had noticed something was off between them half a year ago, but kept quiet to avoid tipping them off. She explained that today, she had coordinated with national security to have them arrested. Upon hearing this, her dad slammed his hand heavily on the table, making the teacups jump. His face turned livid. "I told you from the start that this kid was too scheming, but you insisted he was reliable. I must have been blind to let you marry such a heartless, ungrateful bastard." Her mom sat beside her, clutching her hand and crying, her tears dropping onto the back of Emma's hand. "You silly girl, how could you carry all this by yourself for so long? If anything happened to you, how would your father and I go on living?" Emma hugged her mom and comforted her for a long time, before she finally managed to calm both her parents down. Less than 3 days later, Officer Hayes called her to say that the case was progressing exceptionally smoothly. After being arrested, Liam, in an attempt to reduce his sentence, pinned all the blame he could on Chloe. He claimed that Chloe had taken the initiative to give him the wiretap, and she was the one who introduced the foreign contacts. He said he had just been momentarily blinded by greed. Chloe had originally harbored the hope that Liam would bail her out, but upon hearing this, she completely lost it and spilled everything about the dirty deeds the two of them had committed over the years. This included a leak during a foreign affairs negotiation 3 years ago, which they had orchestrated together by finding a temporary worker to use as a scapegoat. That old case was now being reopened and overturned along with this one. "Oh, right." Officer Hayes' voice paused briefly. "They also confessed that after pulling it off this time, they planned to pin all the responsibility on you, exactly like they did 3 years ago. It's a good thing you caught on early. Now, the chain of evidence is complete, and we've already handed all the materials over to the prosecutor's office. Rest assured, justice will definitely be served." Not even half an hour after she hung up the phone, the department head called her in for a meeting. He told her that he knew her report this time was a great merit, and that her professional skills had always been top-notch. With Liam's position now vacant, He asked if she would be willing to take over as the chief translator for this negotiation. Emma agreed without a moment's hesitation. Over the following week of negotiations, Emma was in remarkably good form. She accurately saw through several textual traps set by the other party. In the end, the agreed-upon cooperation price was $50 million lower than the expected reserve price, saving the government a massive amount of funds. At the celebratory banquet after the negotiations wrapped up, the secretary personally toasted her, saying he was going to recommend her for a commendation of merit. Her colleagues surrounded her with congratulations. Holding her glass, Emma smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace finally settle in her heart. This was the recognition she had earned through her own abilities, not the kind of stolen glory Liam had acquired through crooked means. The verdict was announced 2 months later, and Emma specifically made time to attend the hearing. Liam stood in the defendant's dock wearing a prison uniform. His hair was mostly gray, and he had long lost his former arrogant, high-spirited demeanor. Chloe was even worse. She was so thin, she was almost unrecognizable, staring blankly at the floor with hollow eyes. The judge's voice, reading the verdict, echoed clearly through the courtroom. The defendant, Liam Davis, is guilty of stealing state secrets, accepting bribes, and endangering national security. Punished for multiple crimes, he is sentenced to life in prison, deprived of his political rights for life, and all illegal gains are to be confiscated. The defendant, Chloe, as an accomplice, is also guilty of concealing and hiding the proceeds of a crime, and is sentenced to 15 years in prison. The moment the gavel fell, Emma let out a long breath. In her previous life, she had stood in that exact same dock, listening to the exact same charges. She had listened to Liam standing in the witness box, hypocritically saying, "I never thought my wife was this kind of person." That heart-piercing pain was now finally replaced by delayed justice. When she walked out of the courthouse, Liam's parents were blocking the entrance. Seeing her, they lunged forward to curse at her, calling her ruthless and accusing her of destroying the Davis family line. Emma looked at them coldly. In her past life, when Liam had ruined her family and driven them to their deaths, why hadn't they called him ruthless? Now that he was getting what he deserved, what right did they have to blame her? She pulled out her phone and waved it at them. "Keep making a scene and I'll call the cops. I'll report you for disturbing the peace. If you want to sit in a prison cell with your son, by all means, keep it up." The old couple was too terrified to say another word and slunk away dejectedly. Emma didn't take the minor incident to heart. She turned and went to the mall, buying herself the diamond necklace Liam had once promised to get her, and then went to her favorite French restaurant for a meal. She used to always wait for him to have free time to accompany her. Only now did she realize that earning her own money and spending it herself, without having to wait on someone else's promises, made life so much more comfortable. She put the marital home she had shared with Liam up for sale, and donated all the money to a youth foreign language training fund for underprivileged rural areas. That house held 2 years of fake affection and hypocrisy. She didn't want to keep a single trace of it. Previously, to get married, she had turned down an exchange training spot at the United Nations Translation Service. This time, she resubmitted her application. With her practical work experience over the years and her commendation of merit, she successfully got the offer. At the end of the year, Emma specifically took her annual leave and brought her parents to Hawaii. In her past life, her mother's biggest wish before she died was to go to Hawaii to see the ocean, but she had never made it. Now, wearing a floral dress, her mother was picking up seashells on the beach with her dad. When her mother turned back to wave at Emma, even the wrinkles on her face were filled with joy. Sitting under a beach umbrella and scrolling through her work schedule for the coming year, a notification from the State Department popped up on Emma's phone, stating that she would be promoted to the director of the translation division upon her return. Below that was a message from a friend, asking if she regretted leaving Liam, considering he had once seemed to have a boundless future. Emma smiled and replied, "What's there to regret? Things gained through scheming have to be paid back sooner or later. Making a living through my own abilities gives me more peace of mind than anything else." During the new year, she returned to the department to attend the gala as an outstanding youth representative. While standing on stage giving her speech, she saw her parents in the audience holding up their phones to take pictures of her. The moment the camera flashes lit up, she suddenly remembered the moment right before she died in her previous life. Outside the windows of the detention center in her previous life, the New Year's fireworks had been just as bright. The past life, filled with blood and tears, had finally turned a page completely. Standing under the dazzling lights, Emma knew her life was just beginning. When the first breeze of spring carried the scent of magnolia flowers through the city avenues, Emma dragged her suitcase and boarded a flight to Geneva. The 2-year exchange program at the United Nations Translation Service was a dream she had kept hidden in her heart since her school days. In her previous life, In order to marry Liam, she had personally thrown the offer into the trash, coaxing herself into believing that family was more important than a career. Thinking about it now, it was simply ridiculous. Holding one's dream in one's own hands was the only way to feel secure. Counting on others to make it come true was ultimately nothing but an illusion. Emma rented a small apartment overlooking Lake Geneva. On the windowsill sat the succulents she had brought from home. On weekends, when she didn't have to work overtime, she would either sit on the balcony with her laptop, soaking up the sun while flipping through translation theory books, or ask her fellow American colleagues at the UN to go hiking in the surrounding areas. Occasionally, she would cook a bowl of spicy wontons at home and video chat with her parents back home. Her dad had enrolled in a painting class at the senior center, and her mom had won a gold medal in the community line dancing competition. The two of them frequently went on trips with senior tour groups, living days even more fulfilling than hers, sparing her from worrying about them in the slightest. Once, right after she finished a simultaneous interpretation session for a conference on the educational rights of children in developing countries, a young woman with a high ponytail blocked the entrance of the venue. Clutching a crumpled news clipping in her hand, the young woman's eyes turned red the moment she saw Emma. Her name was Lily. She was the younger sister of Leo, the temporary translator, whom Liam and Chloe had framed to take the fall 3 years ago. Back then, Leo had just graduated and entered the State Department as a temp, somehow ending up as their scapegoat. After serving 3 years in prison, he couldn't find a decent job because of his criminal record. The extreme stress had caused their mother to suffer a stroke, leaving her bedridden. Lily had worked desperately to earn a full scholarship to study in Switzerland. Having recently seen the news about the overturned case back home and learning that Emma was the whistleblower, she had waited there specifically to ask Emma to help submit her brother's appeal documents. Emma took the materials from her hands, a heavy weight pressing on her heart. Back when the crime was exposed, she had thought about this implicated young man, but she had been too busy with work at the time to follow up. She never expected to meet his sister here. When Emma returned home for her debriefing, she specifically made a trip to the National Security Bureau and the legal department of the State Department. She helped organize the case files from that year, along with Liam and Chloe's testimonies. In less than 2 months, Leo's exoneration notice was issued. Not only did he receive state compensation, but the State Department also recommended him for a translation job in cross-border e-commerce. His life slowly got back on track. Lily specifically came to Emma's apartment building to give her a hand-woven lucky knot bracelet. She said that when she graduated, she would also return home to become a translator, keeping her bottom line strong and maintaining a clear conscience, just like Emma. Less than half a month after this incident, Emma was cornered by 2 strange men in an alley on her way home from work. They belonged to the foreign intelligence organization Liam had been in contact with back then. After Liam and Chloe were arrested, their domestic line had been cut, so they wanted to coerce Emma into taking Liam's place. They even threatened the safety of her parents, saying that if she didn't agree, they would forge evidence that she had conspired with Liam and post it online. Emma didn't panic in the slightest. She pretended to need 3 days to consider the offer. She immediately turned around and contacted the national security attaché at the embassy, setting a trap and waiting for them to take the bait. During the exchange, on the evening of the 3rd day, federal agents lying in ambush nearby caught the 2 men in one fell swoop. Following the trail, they dismantled the organization's entire liaison network in Europe. Afterward, the agents presented her with a certificate of commendation, smiling and saying she truly lived up to being someone who had worked alongside them before, adding that her vigilance was stronger than most people's. Emma stood by Lake Geneva, letting the breeze blow past her, clutching the lucky knot bracelet Lily had given her. In the distance, the snow-capped mountains were dazzlingly bright in the sunlight. In the past, she had always thought that the greatest meaning of being reborn was to get revenge. It wasn't until this moment that she understood that revenge had merely cleared the path ahead of her. Her true rebirth was that she could finally rely on her own strength to uphold her bottom line, help those who had been implicated by the darkness, and live a life she never even dared to imagine before. 2 winters passed in Geneva, and her 2-year exchange program came to an end. Emma returned home with an all-A performance evaluation from the translation service. Just after landing, she received her appointment notice from the State Department, officially taking up the post of Director of the Translation Division. Her main responsibilities were coordinating simultaneous interpretation for major foreign affairs events and training young translation talents. Among the newcomers she mentored, there was a young woman named Sophie. Sophie's professional skills were top-notch, and she had incredibly quick reflexes on the spot, making her the most promising one in this batch of recruits. Her only flaw was being a bit too naive when it came to love. Her boyfriend worked in foreign trade and would often beat around the bush, asking her about the contents of recent foreign affairs negotiations. Without overthinking it, she would occasionally casually mention a few things. After Emma discovered this, she didn't criticize Sophie directly. Instead, she took Liam and Chloe's case hiding, their real name Sand, used it as a case study during a security and confidentiality training session for all the newcomers. Afterward, she sought Sophie out for a private chat. She simply told her that no matter how close a relationship outside of work might be, she must never cross the red line of confidentiality. She warned Sophie that she was gambling on someone else's conscience, and if she lost, she would lose her entire life. Not long after, Sophie discovered that her boyfriend was indeed trying to sell the negotiation information to high-bidding foreign clients. She decisively broke up with him and took the initiative to report the situation. Later, Sophie performed exceptionally well in the simultaneous interpretation booth during a major foreign affairs negotiation and was commended by name by the secretary. She specifically ran over to Emma, hugging her and crying, saying that if it hadn't been for Emma's warning, she would have almost gone down the wrong path. Good news also arrived from the Youth Foreign Language Training Fund for rural mountainous areas, which Emma had donated to after selling her marital home. Among the first batch of children who received the training, 7 were admitted to domestic foreign language universities. One of the young girls even sent her a letter, saying that she wanted to be a translator in the future, serving the country, just like Emma. Emma took a weekend off and went to the mountains with a volunteer team, bringing many foreign language picture books for the children. Standing on the podium in the adobe house, looking at the children's bright, shining eyes, her heart melted completely. That marital home filled with hypocrisy and fake affection had been traded for the futures of so many children. It was 10,000 times more meaningful than keeping it for herself to live in. Later, the Department of Justice organized outstanding workers from the legal and political systems to go to prisons to conduct legal education and outreach. It just so happened that one of the stops was the prison where Liam and Chloe were serving their sentences. Standing on the lecture platform and looking down, Emma spotted Liam immediately. His hair was completely white, and he was severely hunched over. Wearing a faded, washed-out prison uniform, he stood in the lineup with his head buried extremely low. When he saw her, his shoulders trembled, and he didn't dare to look up for a long time. Chloe was in the female inmates' lineup, reduced to nothing but skin and bones. Her eyes were dull, and she had long lost the arrogance she possessed back when she had Liam backing her up. After the presentation ended, a prison guard came over and told Emma that Liam wanted to see her to apologize. Emma flatly refused. She didn't need his apology. The ones he owed were the country and the people he had harmed, not her. During that time, Chloe's mother had also looked for Emma several times, kneeling and crying at the entrance of her residential community. She said Chloe knew she had been wrong and begged Emma to issue a letter of forgiveness to help reduce her sentence. Emma simply played the audio recording of Chloe giving Liam the idea to frame her. She calmly asked the mother why Chloe hadn't thought of leaving a way out when she tried to push Emma onto death row back then. If she forgave Chloe, who would make up for the 3 years Leo spent in prison? Who would compensate her parents for the pain of almost losing their daughter? Emma didn't tangle with her any further and directly called the police. After that, the mother never dared to come make a scene again. It was the new year again. Emma stood on the balcony, watching the fireworks exploding downstairs. Her dad was in the living room putting up spring couplets, and her mom was in the kitchen, boiling dumplings. Good news popped up on her phone from Sophie, along with New Year greeting videos sent by the children from the mountains, every one of them smiling brightly and showing off their cute little teeth. As the wind blew, the hot milk tea in her hand gave off comforting, warm steam. Emma suddenly remembered that at this time in her previous life, she had been behind the iron bars of the detention center, watching the fireworks outside and waiting for her execution notice. That blood-soaked past had long since burned completely to ash. Standing amidst the city's lively fireworks and warm atmosphere, she knew that she had not lived this life in vain. The first departmental meeting after the start of spring lasted until the early hours of the morning, leaving half a dozen empty cups of instant coffee on the table. Emma rubbed her throbbing temples while listening to the simultaneous interpretation team report their progress. This year's Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit was the highest-level domestic diplomatic event in recent years. The translation division was responsible for the simultaneous and consecutive interpretation for all sessions, as well as coordinating the primary review of multilingual foreign affairs documents. They were facing a significant shortage of manpower. Just as they were discussing this, someone from the HR department knocked on the door and let in 2 young women wearing navy blue suits. The one walking in front had her hair in a high ponytail and eyes as bright as stars. It was Lily, who had just graduated in Switzerland and tested into the translation division with the highest score in the unified exam. The young girl behind her wore faded canvas sneakers and clutched a crumpled internship certificate in her hand. Her face instantly turned red when she saw Emma. It was Mia, the young girl from the mountains who had sent her a letter 3 years ago and had gotten into the Beijing Foreign Studies University last year. She had applied to be a volunteer for the summit's translation team this time. Sophie happened to walk in carrying a stack of reference materials. Her eyes lit up when she saw the two newcomers. She leaned over and patted Emma's shoulder. "Emma, let me mentor these two. I promised to train them into 2 top-seed simultaneous interpreters for you." The current Sophie was no longer the naive, love-struck girl she used to be. At last year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, she had 0 errors in the simultaneous interpretation for 3 main forums and was already the youngest deputy head of the simultaneous interpretation team in the division. Her boyfriend was a young man from the department's policy research office. They were both so busy that they often only ran into each other in the hallway while working overtime, sharing a cup of milk tea and chatting for a beta romance the whole division knew about. The preparation period was so busy that their feet barely touched the ground. Halfway through, when Emma went to the pantry, she happened to run into Mia standing by the window with red-rimmed eyes, clutching her phone. Standing in front of her was a representative from a foreign NGO in a suit, holding up a business card and talking to her. Emma was just about to walk over when she heard Mia's crisp voice. "I'm sorry, sir. The undisclosed conference topics are classified information, and I cannot give them to you. Regarding the equipment donation, you can go through official channels to connect with our Public Welfare Foundation. Approaching me privately is against regulations." After the man left in a huff, Emma walked over and handed Mia a tissue. The young girl's eyes were still red, but she looked up and smiled. "Emma, I remember what you told us back then. We can never cross the bottom line, right?" Emma patted her on the head. Turning around, she immediately reported the incident to the National Security Liaison Officer. In less than 2 days, feedback arrived. That so-called NGO representative was indeed one of the ones who had slipped through the net from the European intelligence network they had dismantled years ago. He had tried to sneak in during the summit to fish for information, but he was targeted the moment he landed, and this time, he was caught red-handed. The summit went incredibly smoothly. On the day of the closing ceremony, when Lily and Sophie finished their partnership in the simultaneous interpretation booth, the entire venue erupted in thunderous applause. Emma sat backstage, watching the 2 young women run over with bouquets in their arms. Mia squeezed to the front, holding up a freshly taken photo, and the faces of all 4 of them smiled radiantly in the frame. After the celebratory banquet dispersed, Emma scrolled through her phone and saw a notification from the Public Welfare Foundation. The rural foreign language training fund she had established by selling her house back then now had nearly 1,000 translation professionals signed up as volunteers, covering 37 rural schools across 12 provinces. This year, another 23 children had been admitted to foreign language majors. Lily leaned over to show her a social media post from her brother, Leo. In the photo, Leo was holding his newborn daughter, who had just turned 1 month old, and sitting next to him was their mother, who was now able to sit up and eat on her own. The caption read, "Life is getting more and more hopeful." Looking at the glowing light from the phone screen, Emma suddenly felt that all the hardships she had endured along the way were entirely worth it. When autumn arrived, the National Security Education Exhibition, prepared by the Department of National Security, opened to the public. As a meritorious contributor to dismantling the Foreign Intelligence Network, Emma was invited to be a guest at the unveiling ceremony. As soon as she reached the entrance of the exhibition hall, a staff member guided her to a display case in the core exhibition area. Inside the glass case, laid out on red velvet, quietly rested an old men's steel strap watch. She recognized the scratch on the edge of the dial at a glance. It was the exact same birthday gift containing a hidden micro-wiretap that Chloe had given to Liam back then. A docent nearby was explaining to visiting students that it was through this very watch that they had located the signal of the Foreign Intelligence Organization, followed the trail to bust the domestic intelligence network, and prevented a massive leak of classified information. Emma stood in front of the display case and looked at it for a long time, the memories of her past life suddenly surging up. Back then, she had taken this watch to Liam, telling him there was a wiretap inside. He had feigned gratitude to her face, only to immediately conspire with Chloe to pin the blame for the leaked documents on her. She had stayed in the detention center for 6 months, and on the day she was finally sentenced to death, the autumn sun outside the window had looked just like this. Sophie, who had come along with her, nudged her arm, pulling her out of her memories. She pointed at another piece of evidence beneath the display case, Liam and Chloe's signed confessions from back then. "Emma, I heard their applications for a sentence reduction were rejected last month," Sophie said. "Liam was diagnosed with liver cancer in prison and only has a few months left to live. Chloe has to serve her full 20 years before she can get out. Her life is basically ruined. Emma nodded, feeling no particular emotion. She had let go of her hatred the day she sent them to prison. Those people rotting in the mud were no longer worth a single ounce of her attention. When she walked out of the exhibition hall, her parents were waiting for her at the entrance, and a whole string of people followed behind their car. Leo was carrying his little daughter, who had just learned to walk. Lily was linking arms with her boyfriend, who turned out to be Agent Carter from National Security, the very same agent who had cooperated with Emma to take down the European intelligence hub years ago. Mia was carrying a bag of wild walnuts from the mountains, and Sophie and her partner were holding boxes of the osmanthus cake that Emma's mother loved. The whole group clamored noisily, saying they were going to Emma's house for hot pot. When they got home, the aroma of spicy beef tallow hot pot wafted from the kitchen. Emma stood at the entryway changing her shoes, watching the house full of people bustling about. Leo's little girl clutched the candy Mia had given her, smearing it all over her face. Emma's mother held Sophie's hand, urging her to hurry up and have her wedding, promising to give her a huge red envelope when the time came. Lily and Carter were sitting on the couch, heads close together as they looked at the photos Emma and Lily had taken in Switzerland years ago, smiling with absolute sweetness. Emma walked out to the balcony. As the breeze blew, the red lucky knot bracelet hanging by the window swayed gently. It was the one Lily had given her years ago, having kept it with her for several years. The threads were already worn to a soft shine. Her phone chimed with a notification. It was a video sent by the Public Welfare Foundation. The children in the mountains were standing in their newly built multimedia classroom, holding up the foreign language certificates they had just received, shouting in unison at the camera, "Thank you, teacher!" The elementary school downstairs had just let out. Children in their school uniforms ran and skipped by with their backpacks, the setting sun stretching their shadows long across the ground. Leaning against the window and looking at the warm glow washing over the city, Emma suddenly remembered her very last thought before she died in her previous life. If there is a next life, I will never love the wrong person again. I will properly honor and care for my parents, and I will be an upright and honorable translator. As it turned out, heaven had not only given her a chance to start over, but had also laid out all the beautiful things she had never even dared to imagine right in front of her. She hadn't lived as someone else's accessory, nor was she trapped in a cage of hatred. She had become her own light and had illuminated the paths of so many others. In this lifetime, she lived with more peace of mind and shone brighter than anyone else. The warm, lively atmosphere of the hot pot gathering hadn't even dissipated when Emma received a call from the city's prison administration. The officer on the other end spoke politely, informing her that Liam's liver cancer had reached its final, terminal stage. Painkillers were barely working anymore. During his lucid moments, he repeatedly asked to see her, and the officer asked if it would be convenient for her to make a trip there. Emma originally wanted to refuse outright. However, less than 10 minutes after she hung up, Carter from National Security, Lily's boyfriend, who was now the deputy captain of the operations team, called. He told her that Liam was still holding on to a clue regarding a hidden liaison from the European intelligence network from back then. He had been interrogated several times before but had stubbornly kept his mouth shut. Now, presumably because he was dying, he was finally relenting and wanted to use the opportunity of seeing Emma to spill the information. Carter asked if she could make the trip, as it would help them fully close the old case once and for all. Emma thought about it and agreed. Over the weekend, she drove herself to the prison. Through the thick glass, she almost couldn't recognize the emaciated man sitting on the other side, whose hair had mostly fallen out, as the once arrogant and high-spirited Liam. The moment he saw her, tears streamed down his face. His hands trembled so much he could barely hold the receiver. Stuttering and stammering, he told her he was sorry, claiming that Chloe had forced him to do everything back then, that he had never wanted Emma to die, and that she had always been in his heart. Looking at him in this pathetic state, Emma didn't feel a single ripple of emotion in her heart. It was like watching a complete stranger put on a theatrical play. She waited until he had cried enough before speaking, her voice entirely flat and devoid of inflection. "I didn't come here today to listen to your confessions," she said. "Carter mentioned you have an unconfessed clue. If you want to say it, say it. If not, I'm leaving." Liam's crying abruptly choked off. He stared at her in disbelief, then suddenly began slamming his hands against the glass in agitation, shouting, "How can you be so cold-blooded? I'm about to die. Can't you just forgive me this once? And help me beg for mercy for Chloe, please." She was deceived back then, too. She shouldn't have to serve such a long sentence. Emma was so infuriated by his absurdity that she let out a laugh. Leaning in closer, her voice turned icy. "Back then, when I came to you with the evidence of the wiretap, and you immediately turned around and pinned the blame for the leaked secrets on my head, why didn't you think you were being cold-blooded?" I stayed in the detention center for 6 months, begging you to come out and testify for me. Instead, you and Chloe took the project bonus money I had saved up to go on your honeymoon to the Maldives. Why didn't you think you were being cold-blooded then? On the day I was escorted to the execution ground, while the two of you were in my marital home celebrating your promotion, why didn't you think about being cold-blooded? Emma watched as his face instantly turned an ashen gray. Not giving him another chance to speak, she stood straight up. If you want to share the clue, tell the officers. If you don't, take it to your grave. We'll find out sooner or later anyway. As for forgiveness, do you even deserve it? Chloe's crimes are her own doing. It's not my place to beg for mercy on her behalf. With that, Emma turned and walked away directly, not even giving him a backward glance. Coming out of the prison gates, she saw Mia holding a stack of legal education brochures, standing at the bottom of the steps. Mia had come to the prison today with the division's legal education volunteer team for an event. Seeing Emma come out, she quickly ran over and handed her a cup of hot roasted milk tea. Her eyes were bright and shining. Emma, I saw you come in earlier and guessed you were here because of the past. It's all in the past now. Let's not waste our anger on him. Emma took the roasted milk tea, the warmth heating her palms. She smiled and ruffled Mia's hair. I'm not angry. I just feel pretty good. This whole ordeal is finally coming to a complete end. Less than a week later, Emma received news of Liam's death from illness. She heard that in the end, he did confess the clue about the liaison. National security followed the trail and busted the final hideout. The espionage case from back then finally came to a complete close. When Chloe heard the news in prison, she threw a massive fit. She had originally accumulated enough commendations over the years to qualify to apply for a sentence reduction, but because of this outburst, her eligibility was immediately revoked. Her 20-year sentence was now set in stone. At the end of the year, the Rural Foreign Language Training Fund, that Emma spearheaded, won the Ministry of Civil Affairs Annual Public Welfare Project Award. On the day of the award ceremony, wearing a formal suit and standing on the stage looking down, Emma saw the first row filled with familiar faces. Her parents were holding up their phones to take pictures of her. Sophie, holding her 6-month-old daughter, was waving at her. Lily was linking arms with Carter, smiling brightly. Next to Mia sat over a dozen children Emma had sponsored, who had traveled from all over specifically for this. Every one of their faces was flushed red as they clapped desperately for her. When Emma accepted the trophy, she said only one thing in her speech. I never started this project to win awards. I just wanted to give more kids like Mia the chance to build their own dreams, so they wouldn't be trapped by their backgrounds, and wouldn't have to walk the wrong paths I took in my past life. The applause from the audience lasted for almost a minute. Standing under the spotlight, looking at those young, hopeful faces, Emma suddenly felt that all her efforts had received the best possible return. Time flew by, and 3 years passed in a flash. Emma stepped down from her core position in the translation division to become the full-time chairwoman of the Public Welfare Foundation. She dedicated more of her energy to rural foreign language education and the cultivation of young translation talents. Sophie had long since become the youngest simultaneous interpretation team leader in the division's history. Just last year, she won the highest award in the national translation industry. Her relationship with her husband from the Policy Research Office was still as wonderful as ever. The two of them pooled their money to buy a house in Emma's neighborhood, and after work, they would bring their child over to Emma's place to freeload dinners. Lily and Carter got married and had a robust, chubby-cheeked baby boy. As soon as he could speak, he started following Lily around memorizing English vocabulary, his sweet, milky voice making him incredibly endearing. Mia officially joined the staff with the highest score in the Translation Division's unified exam that year. After working under Sophie for 2 years, she was now able to hold her own and handle simultaneous interpretation for main forums. The young men chasing after her could line up from the entrance of the Translation Division all the way down the main avenue. But she poured all her heart and soul into her work and public welfare projects, saying she wanted to make some real achievements first before considering personal matters. That spring, the high-level trade negotiations between the U.S. and the European Union were held in Geneva, Switzerland. The State Department specifically invited Emma back to lead the team as the head of interpretation. Emma took Sophie, Lily, and Miathe, 3 young women, and flew to Geneva. The negotiations lasted a full 7 days and were exceptionally grueling. The 4 of them worked around the clock, sleeping only 4 hours a day, meticulously refining all the clauses down to every punctuation mark, without a single error or omission. On the day the negotiations were finally and successfully signed, the head of the EU delegation specifically came over to shake their hands, saying this was the most professional translation team he had seen in his 30-year career, bar none. As everyone was leaving, a young Asian American man in a suit stopped Mia, his face flushed red. He said he was an accompanying interpreter for the EU headquarters. His hometown was in a remote mountainous region, and 10 years ago, he had taken the online charity classes offered by their fund. Back then, he didn't even have a proper English teacher. It was their classes that made him fall in love with foreign languages and led to his current success. As he spoke, he pulled a crumpled postcard from his bag. It was one Mia had sent him back then. On it was written, "Study hard, the world outside is vast." Holding that postcard, Mia's eyes instantly turned red. She turned, ran over, and tugged on Emma's sleeve, her voice trembling slightly. "Emma, look. Our light has truly reached even further places." Emma patted her hand and smiled, nodding. "Yes. Back then, I just wanted to open a window for a few kids in the mountains. I never imagined it would become a beacon illuminating the paths of thousands." After returning home, Emma launched a translation talent seed program within the foundation. It was specifically dedicated to providing scholarships and free professional training to foreign language students from underprivileged backgrounds and partnered with many foreign affairs institutions to offer them internship and employment opportunities. Emma spent most of her time immersed in various rural mountain schools, teaching English to the children and telling them what the outside world was like. Once, when she went to teach at a rural elementary school in a remote mountain town, a little girl with pigtails tugged at the corner of Emma's shirt after class and stuffed a handful of wild berries she had picked herself into Emma's hand. She said she wanted to be a translator when she grew up, just as amazing as Emma, and that she would come back to teach the village kids English. Emma patted her head and handed her a foreign language dictionary she had specifically brought along. On the flyleaf, she had written, "You can also become your own light." On New Year's Eve, their large extended family crammed into Emma's house to celebrate the holidays. Leo's daughter was already in elementary school. She stood on the coffee table in the living room, giving an English speech to everyone, her sweet, childish voice making everyone laugh. Sophie's little girl and Lily's boy rolled around on the carpet, fighting over a toy car. Emma's parents and Lily's mother were in the kitchen making dumplings, while Leo and Carter were putting up spring couplets. Sophie and her husband were helping out in the kitchen. Mia was holding up her phone, filming a vlog, saying she was going to send a New Year's greeting video to the foundation's volunteers. Emma leaned against the balcony doorframe, looking at the warm light and listening to the joyous laughter filling the room. Her phone chimed with a ding. It was a message from the foundation's staff, saying that this year, 15 more schools had been added to their assistance program, and over 2,000 more translation professionals had signed up as volunteers. Fine snowflakes drifted outside the window, and the sound of firecrackers rose and fell in the distance. Emma remembered. The resentment and unwillingness she had felt right before her death in her previous life now felt as though they belonged to another lifetime entirely. Heaven had given her a chance to start over, and she hadn't allowed herself to be trapped in a cage of hatred, nor had she lived as anyone's accessory. She had become her own sun, casting her light upon even more places. In this lifetime, she had not let herself down, she had not failed her family, and she had not let down the era she lived in. Her life was truly, completely fulfilled. A full 17 years had passed since the news of Liam's death from illness in prison. As the first cool autumn breeze swept around the street corner, Chloe stood outside the prison gates in a daze for a long time, clutching a crumpled certificate of release. Having served her full 20-year sentence, she was only 46 years old. Yet, her temples were already covered in white frost, and her back was severely hunched. She was still wearing the same old jacket her family had sent her before she went to prison, now washed out and pilled, making her look completely out of place among the brightly dressed pedestrians rushing down the street. She first returned to her old home, only to discover that her parents had sold the house 10 years ago and moved to her uncle's place in a neighboring province. They had left a message with a neighbor for her, saying they no longer recognized her as their daughter and telling her never to come looking for them again. She ran to her old fair-weather friends for help. They either pretended not to know her and slammed the door in her face, or mocked her from behind closed doors, saying that since she had followed Liam in committing such heinous acts back then, she had a lot of nerve coming back now to look for favors. Without a degree or marketable skills, and getting up in age, she hit a wall everywhere she went looking for a job. In the end, she could only find work washing dishes in a small diner at the end of an alley, earning a little over $2,000 a month and renting a basement apartment that was freezing in the winter and sweltering in the summer. One day, while she was out buying ingredients, she passed by a bus stop in the city center and immediately spotted a public service billboard. The person on the poster was someone etched into her very bones: Emma, the woman she had hated for half her life. The advertisement was a promotional campaign for the Rural Foreign Language Public Welfare Fund. Emma stood among a group of children in traditional ethnic clothing, her smile radiant and relaxed. Printed next to her was a line of text, giving every child the chance to touch the world. Below that were the names of the core founders, Emma, Sophie, and Mia. An electronic screen next to the billboard was playing a rolling broadcast of interviews with young translation pioneers. On screen, Mia, dressed in a formal suit, was speaking with calm elegance about her professional journey. She mentioned how she had received help in her youth, which allowed her to embark on the path of translation, and promised to continue passing this kindness forward in the future. Chloe stood rooted to the spot for a long time. The plastic bag she was carrying slipped from her hand, dropping to the ground, and she didn't even notice as potatoes rolled everywhere. She remembered how, over 20 years ago, she had been so jealous of Emma's privileged background and natural talent, and the way Liam always revolved around her. That jealousy had driven her to single-mindedly manipulate Liam into setting a trap for Emma, all just to destroy her life. But look at things now. Emma had become a highly respected senior figure in her industry, running a charity that benefited millions of children. She was surrounded by family and friends, having everything she could ever want. And what about Chloe herself? Disowned by her parents, penniless, and unable to even find a decent job. Her entire life had long been destroyed by her own greed back then. Driven by some inexplicable impulse, Chloe tracked down the office of the Public Welfare Foundation. She waited downstairs for 3 full days before she finally saw Emma walking out of the building. Emma was surrounded by 7 or 8 teenagers, all of whom had just come from the mountains to participate in an exchange program. Emma was looking down, gently fixing a child's crooked scarf. The expression on her face was so peaceful and relaxed that she didn't look at all like someone approaching 60 years old. Mia was right beside her, carrying one of the children's backpacks, smiling and chatting with Emma. Chloe hid behind a tree, watching them walk away. In the end, she didn't dare to step forward. She knew that Emma would never agree to see her anyway, and even if she did, there wouldn't be a single ounce of sympathy for her. Every single thing Chloe had done back then was enough to make her pay for the rest of her life. Later, she quit her job at the diner, bought a train ticket to another city, and never came back. People said she was working odd jobs in a factory down south, completely alone without even a single person to talk to. Meanwhile, Emma's life, and the lives of those she loved, were vibrant and full of warmth. 2 years ago, Mia had married the Asian American interpreter she met in Geneva. Both of them were core volunteers for the Public Welfare Fund, running off to the mountainous areas whenever they had free time. They lived a sweet and incredibly happy life. Sophie had long since become the Director General of the Translation Division, renowned in the industry for her sharp and eloquent skills. Her husband had also been promoted to the Director of the Policy Research Office. Their daughter had been accepted with a full scholarship to a top-tier university's School of Foreign Languages, and as soon as she started her freshman year, she signed up as a volunteer for the foundation. Lily's son was admitted to the Diplomatic Academy. After graduation, he joined the Foreign Affairs Bureau of National Security. Following in Carter's footsteps, he also became an officer, protecting the country. Their entire family consisted of pillars serving the nation. Emma's parents remained in robust health. Every day after dinner, they went to the park to line dance. They even organized a senior citizens English interest club, teaching elderly folks simple travel English. They lived more fulfilling lives than anyone else. The year Emma turned 70, she received 2 of the most prestigious awards, the Lifetime Achievement Award in the national translation industry, and the highest honor in national public welfare, the Charity Role Model Award. On the day of the award ceremony, the audience was filled with her closest loved ones. Her parents, now 95 years old, were wheeled in on wheelchairs. They were still holding up the same senior-friendly phones they had used for years to take pictures of her. Their hands shook so badly that the camera angles were completely crooked, but they still couldn't stop smiling from ear to ear. Sophie and Lily had both retired. The 2 of them huddled together, whispering that Emma had lived a more worthwhile life than anyone else. Mia sat in the front row with her husband and daughter. Her daughter, who was already the head of youth volunteers for the Public Welfare Fund, looked exactly like Mia did when she was young, with eyes as bright as stars. When accepting the award, Emma didn't say much. She only repeated the sentence she had said many years ago when she received her first Public Welfare Award. "I just wanted to open a window for the children. I never expected that with everyone's hard work, we would bring forth an entire spring." The applause from the audience lasted for a long time. Standing under the spotlight and looking at those familiar faces below, Emma suddenly remembered the scene right before her death in her previous life. She had been locked up in the detention center. Liam and Chloe had stood outside the iron bars, smiling smugly as they told her she would never turn her life around. Her parents had passed away one after another from the shock of her situation, and she couldn't even close her eyes in peace when she died. That bone-chilling hatred and unwillingness thinking about it now, it had faded to feel like something from a past life. Oh, wait, it was something from a past life. Heaven had given her a chance to start over. She hadn't chosen to stay trapped in hatred or tangled up with rotten people. Instead, she had poured all her energy into the things she wanted to do. She had become her own sun and illuminated the paths of so many others. What else was there to be dissatisfied with? After receiving the award, Emma didn't stay in the city. She packed her bags and went down south to the small mountain village where she had once volunteered to teach. That little girl with pigtails who had stuffed wild berries into her hands back then was now the principal of this mountain elementary school. Wearing a cleanly washed cotton shirt, she stood at the school gate to welcome Emma. Behind her followed a flock of chattering children. When they saw Emma, they crowded around her, stuffing handfuls of wild flowers and berries into her hands, exactly like that little girl had done all those years ago. The principal took Emma to see the newly built academic building. Every classroom was equipped with a smart interactive screen. The children could connect directly to master classes in the capital, learning English from the very best teachers. She smiled and told Emma, now, in this school, 7 college students had already emerged, 3 of whom majored in foreign languages and returned to the mountains to become teachers after graduation, determined to keep passing this light forward. Emma sat in the bleachers by the playground, watching the children take their English class. Their crisp, clear voices reading aloud drifted far into the distance, passing over the old walnut tree nearby as its leaves rustled softly in the breeze. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the leaves, splashing onto the back of her hand with a gentle, soothing warmth. Mia sat beside her, handing her a cup of hot roasted milk tea. It was the exact same temperature as the cup she had handed Emma outside the prison gates all those years ago. The Foundation just completed the statistics, Mia said, a smile in her voice. We now cover all underdeveloped counties across the nation, having helped over 2 million children in total. More than 50,000 translation professionals have signed up as volunteers. The seeds you sowed back then have now grown into massive trees. Emma took the roasted milk tea, the warmth heating her palms. Looking up at the crystal-clear blue sky, she let out a soft laugh. In this lifetime, she had honored her parents, realized her dream of becoming a translator, and established a public welfare foundation that benefited millions of children. She was surrounded by soulmates, cherished friends, and sensible mentees, living every single day to its fullest and most meaningful extent. Those who had owed her in her past life had all met the fates they deserved. She had not wasted the chance to start over, nor had she let down her own life. The breeze carried the children's reading voices right to her ears. Closing her eyes, Emma felt only a profound sense of completeness in this life, with no lingering regrets whatsoever.
What a satisfying ending! This story shows that the best payback isn't to destroy others, but elevating yourself. When you take charge of your destiny, even deep wounds can bloom into something beautiful.